I can pour on
Hey,
the run.
Tom Stewart here. I'm with Liz Trotter. This is Smart Business Moves. And our guest today from, I guess you're still in Shanghai, Perry Tait. Hey, Perry, how are you today?
No,
How are you this morning?
I'm great. I am great. Let me just see what happened to my light. I am in. Here I am. I'm in
Okay.
Ningbo. Right. So
Oh,
Ningbo is where my factory is. Shanghai is where my family is. So it's 210 miles. There, it's 210 miles between Shanghai and Ningbo, and I can catch a train which takes 1 hour and 40 minutes to get between the two.
wow.
Nice. That is very nice.
Yeah. And there are trains that go at that speed between every. Oh, what happened there? Oh, good. That's you doing that. So there's trains that travel at that speed between every city in China. So it's like it's quite a fascinating form of transport.
A little faster than Amtrak.
And it's 5 a.m. Oh my God! I went from I booked to go from Kansas City to Chicago, Chicago to Washington, and Washington to Washington D.C. to then D.C. to New York. The train from Kansas City to Chicago was 7 hours late, so we had to catch a plane so that we could catch our train from from Chicago to Washington D.C. Oh my God! And then it just goes ka-chomp, 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 ka-chomp.
It feels like that too because you're so used to it being so fast, the trains being so fast, but it doesn't feel slow to me.
Perry, our guest yesterday was Chris Schwab. I don't know if you know Chris or not. He does a couple of things, but one of the things he does, he owns a house cleaning business in Washington, D.C., but Chris lives in London, England, and he just talks about how great it is because he can sleep in and wake up when he feels like it and still gets work done before his employees get in since he's like 5 hours ahead of them. So
that's great.
That's working for him. And
I feel like it's so cool.
That's
and
great.
His fiance is works for the airlines in Japan, and they were scheduled to get married, and then COVID hit, and she can't leave Japan, and he can't go there, and they're trying to get married via paperwork and
mail
documents, mailing them back and forth, translating from English to Japanese, and it's an interesting international situation. Not
it really is.
But before we jump in with Perry, Liz, do you want to kind of take us through quickly?
What a nightmare.
No kidding. Yeah, let me say hi to everybody real quick.
That's
just
great.
saying hi on Facebook. Hey, y'all. All righty. Okay, so tomorrow we are going to have Heather. Y'all know Heather Canning. She's been on quite a few times. And she's going to be talking about the best kept secrets of Indeed because she talks to the Indeed reps all the time. And every time I talk with Heather, she's got new intel about how to use Indeed to its most effective way. Like, for example, one of the things that she found out fairly recently is no matter what you do the rest of the month, you always need to be posting a new ad on the first of the month. And she'll tell us all the reasons why. Even if you just put one up on the 30th of the month, too bad, you need to post another one on the 1st. And she'll explain all that to us. So she just got a ton of best kept secrets, which I'm excited about. And then we have a secret guest on Thursday. And I forgot to give you guys a clue yesterday, but I will give you 2 today. I've told you so far that he's a man and that he has never been on this show before. So 2 other hints. One is he has been in the carpet cleaning industry for a long time. And that is what he is more widely known for. And the second piece of information is that he bought his cleaning company in the last year. So those are the 2 bits of info for today.
I'll have to think about that.
Yeah. Hey, Denise, I know. She has a bunch of great tips, and everybody's struggling with hiring right now, right? So we all need those tips. All righty.
Perry, it's been a couple of weeks
Good.
since we've had the opportunity to talk. It seems like a lot's been happening in the world over the last 2 weeks. How do things look in your world right now?
Well, interesting. I'll talk about that hiring thing, by the way, because one of the juxtapositions, I've got a company in China, right? So so we have 27 employees here, and one of the interesting juxtapositions about how China handled the coronavirus is they made it illegal to terminate the employment of anybody under COVID.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
I remember you said that
so
last time
nobody
you were
lost
on.
their
I was
job.
like, wow.
They didn't give us any money towards the employees or their salaries. It's expected that if you have a company, you can survive whatever. I don't know what, but anyway, we were looking at, yeah, and then by surprise, we, as my son, and he's legal refugees, he's all the formal news. Me up, and like the government's giving us in the US dollars, it's about $5 a month that we employed during.
That you do what?
So actually had some people went back to their homeland, their home, like it's like in California, New York, so they go back to New York, come back to California, you know, they stay in their hometown. That kind of
your sound is really
structure.
kind of
We had some back after COVID, and we put some new people. We had people that didn't come back after.
Perry, your sound is clipping pretty bad. Is there maybe like a Wi-Fi router or something you could move closer to, or is that your internet connection? Because we're having a hard time hearing you.
And now you're completely frozen. Oh, poo. I know everybody really wanted to hear from him today, too. Such a unique perspective that we have just not had from anybody else. I'm hoping he's moving closer. Well, while he is moving a little bit closer, hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed, Perry always gone. Hopefully he's going to come back. So while Perry is figuring out that piece, hopefully. Yeah.
Oh,
carry on.
You're better. You're better. Yay.
Better? Yeah.
So much better, Perry.
Got to get that signal the right way.
Yes.
Share that story again, because we didn't quite catch it. You couldn't lay anybody off.
Okay. All right, and then hold your hand up if you can't hear me. Yeah, something like that. Some hand signal. Okay, so in China, I've got 27 staff. Well, I had about 30 something, and it was illegal to terminate somebody's employment during COVID, and there was no government subsidy for employment. In other words, if you have a company here and you employ people here, then it's your responsibility to pay them through the holidays, pay them through the lockdown, pay them through the extended lockdown, right? Now, some people, because it's a kind of like a migrant nation, it's got 1.4 billion people. Some people, maybe 60% of the population of Ningbo normally actually comes from somewhere else. So that's where they go back. You hear about, the Chinese New Year, and they all go back to their homeland. And we just had the national holiday, and 405 million people went from their place of work to their home and back in October the 1st to October the 8th. So they managed to run all these people through public transport. So we had some people that didn't come back after COVID, and we put some new people on to take their place. Well, this week, Harrison rang me up and he said, we just got given $85 per person per month for each person that we've put on during COVID. So we got no employment support for paying everybody through COVID. But here's the common logic, right? Is that the government, it's interesting because you'd think they'd give us money, or they'd have some sort of social security system, to support the people, because it's communism as a raw, or socialism anyway. But they didn't. They put all the burden on the businesses. But the beauty of that is that nobody ever lost their relationship with their boss.
Right.
Now, New Zealand did the same. New Zealand gave 3 months' salary to each business owner 7 days after they went into lockdown, so that all of those relationships were secure. And when COVID was over, everybody went back to work with their boss. But when you have this unemployment mentality, all of a sudden you've got 30 million people who are now employed by the government to do nothing, who have broken their relationship with their boss. Now they're all sitting out there going, do I get another job? So you can't turn that economy on as naturally and as easily as, and you also can't say it's illegal to terminate anybody. I know it's different, they're just completely different systems, but it's interesting, that how did China turn back on so quickly? Well, nobody lost their job. Not one.
I'm sure you're familiar with what they did in the United States with their Paycheck Protection Program. The idea was for employers to keep people working even though they weren't busy. And it worked out really well for some industries, and other industries it was kind of difficult if the local government was telling you that you needed to shut down. So it had mixed results.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was it. So we're back on full steam. But the other answer to your question, like how are things going? Well, we had an outbreak in Qingdao, right? Qingdao's about, I don't know, Qingdao would be to Shanghai as Seattle is to LA, something like that, like there. So maybe a couple of thousand miles north or something like that. And but most of the outbreaks in China are coming from frozen food, and so is this one. Right, so they're importing shrimp from Brazil, or beef from Germany, or salmon from Norway, or whatever. And these food plants, I think we might have talked about it last time, but food plants look like they've got the ideal conditions for COVID. So anyway, this was another one. So they had the outbreak, and it was in the middle of this holiday. So the way they dealt with it is they shut down Qingdao, into lockdown. They said in the next 5 days, 9 million population, that the residents of Ningbo have to have the nucleic test, which is the accurate one. The 15-minute test is a not so accurate. So they have 9 million. Then the 4.37 million people that went to Qingdao, because it's a coastal city, so it's kind of like a destination. So during the holiday period, they all have to have a nucleic test within 7 days. And then they can get the hold on the whole, where it's gone and has it spread and who's got it and all that. And in the meantime, any of those people who went to Qingdao had to go into self-isolation. So you go, well, how do you do all that in 5 and 7 days? And it's all done with a green QR code on your phone, right? So I won't take the time to go and look it up, but you get a green QR code, and this green QR code, if it turns red, you can't catch a bus, you can't catch a taxi, you can't catch or Uber, you can't stay in a hotel, you can't go into a shopping center. You need this green code to do anything. So all those people, anybody who didn't get a test would have gone red. And then anybody who's been in contact with anybody would have gone red. So then they can actually control it. It's quite fascinating.
So the frozen food transmission, I know that in the U.S., some of the medical community and pundits have dismissed that as a real vector, but in China, that's being perceived as a real form of transmission.
Sure, I mean it's the only source of community outbreak, and New Zealand also had an outbreak where they were COVID free for 102 days, and then they had an outbreak in Auckland, and 7 of the people infected were working in a frozen food processing plant, like an imported frozen food processing plant. So I would suggest that will be reviewed in the future, that opinion.
So the mechanics of imported frozen foods. So I guess this is like raw meat, and then it's being thawed, and then people are handling the raw thaw food. Yeah, the RNA is there and it's still active. If you're a
because you
go ahead.
Yeah, it's already dead, right? So if it's dead, it's not going to die because you froze it,
right?
So, like, if I buy frozen shrimp at the grocery store and take it home and cook it, theoretically, if it's from the wrong place, it could be carrying COVID.
Well, yeah. So I mean, the basic logic of hygiene. I mean, we're all in the hygiene business, right? So the basic logic is if you're dealing with frozen food, and this was actually, they said this is on the outside of the packaging. That is rare. That is rare. But that they you would handle it with tongs. What do you call them? Tongs.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Yeah. So handle it with tongs. Put it in the oven or fry pan or whatever, and then obviously it'll cook off at that point. So it's not heat resistant, I don't think, but it's just that fact that somebody coughed and breathed and then snap frozen and send it off all over the world.
Wow.
But you guys had some of your biggest outbreaks in food handling places, so I don't know how they can suggest that it's not able to be transported with frozen food.
Yeah, the meat processing plants out in the Midwest were struggling to stay open at one point.
Yeah, they had massive outbreaks. Yeah.
I think that they thought of it the way they portrayed it was similar to how you have outbreaks in any other area. So you have outbreaks in rehabilitation centers, right? It's not because that all rehabilitation centers are bad, but it came into one person at this center that spread it. So I think that's what they were thinking, is that the person brought it in to the meat packing place and it got spread around that way. So at least that's
I would suggest that that's accurate how they had the outbreak in there, but the question is they in there, and all these people are exhaling millions of virus cells a minute, or an hour. I've actually I'm writing an article, but I've run out of time on how many millions there are in every breath and all that kind of stuff. It's like scary. Like you just don't want to read it.
Yeah.
So then that then comes out and lands on the food, because it's not, you don't have to spit for you to get it. Like if you look at a current COVID positive warning, it talks about cough, sneeze, and exhale. And if you listen to CDC language now, it includes talking. If you've been in the company with somebody for more than 15 minutes and you've been talking, right? So that gets rid of the cough, sneeze argument. Is already that subtly, they can't say it because it's politically not appropriate until November the 4th to say it.
Right. Well, I am one of those people that I communicate instead of texting. I do voice to text, and I can tell you that what my phone screen looks like after just 1 hour of voice to text, there is no doubt in my mind.
Right. That's a very good.
A lot of expectorant out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would not doubt that I expel more than other people, but regardless, there is just too much on my phone to doubt that it's going just
yes, and that there is called droplet transmission, right? Or it's no transmission, but you know what I mean. That if you had coronavirus, that what you can see on your phone is what masks are for and what social distancing is for.
Yes.
The other part is like if you walk up to the mirror in the bathroom and just breathe on it, you know, and draw a little love heart for somebody, you know, when we're kids in winter and we're driving in the car and we're drawing cartoons and stuff like that, that's a volume of vapor that never makes it to your phone, you know, or you wear a mask and your glasses fog up. That's in every single breath. Why do we drink a glass of water when we wake up in the morning like we're meant to? I'm drinking coffee. But, you know, it's because every breath all night had water in it. You know, we need to put some water back into the body at least to kickstart the system where it was when we went to sleep, you know?
Yes.
Just a point of information. I Googled, can COVID spread through frozen food? And there are some reputable medical journals that are suggesting that the evidence is showing that it can. And they mention New Zealand and China and some of the work that they're doing there. For whatever it's worth, the CDC says it's not really a big concern, but it wasn't until recently that they are starting to acknowledge that it spreads through aerosol. So, you know, let's see where that goes.
Well, and I think that you were giving us some dates on the last call, Perry, where we were announcing things like 4 months after. We were announcing them 4 months later here than we were exposed to the information. So and not
most
feeling
people,
really.
You know, most people don't realize. I mean, let's talk about what's really going on in the world right now, right? So it's politically sensitive. I mean, I'm not doing anything on Facebook about COVID. I mean, we have a product called the Fog Blaster, which is an airborne sanitizer. I don't do anything on Facebook with it, right? I don't talk about COVID on Facebook because most of my customers are pressure washers and window cleaners. Most of them are, you know, have a red orientation, let's say, you know, like a Republican orientation. Most of them don't believe that COVID is particularly real or particularly serious. You know, so I don't want to be the prophet of doom, you know, so I enjoy an opportunity to talk to you guys with what I've studied and know, but I understand how politically sensitive it is to even talk about it. Some people go, I'm not going to listen to that. Like somebody's going to talk about coronavirus. Like it's not even real. It's a hoax. It's just, it's a corporate socialism plot to bring us all under control and crumble our economies. And the bottom line is it could be being used that way. But on the other side, you know, you've got massive problems in some parts of the world and COVID-free in other parts of the world. So Thailand is COVID-free, Vietnam is COVID-free, New Zealand is COVID-free, Australia is nearly COVID-free, Singapore is COVID-free, Japan is nearly COVID-free, Korea is nearly COVID-free. Like they've got, all of us have got little outbreaks, you know, but usually from food or somebody coming into the country, and most of them are pocketed with quarantine, but there's still some cross-border, you know, like for example, China and Russia. Russia has a problem. China doesn't have a problem, but they've got a common border. So if in those cities near Russia, China has to be more vigilant and has to stop the travel into the rest of China without containing that if it comes across the border there, because they've got a land border. You know, it'd be like, but more like, I've never been there, so I don't know if it's more like you in Canada or more like you in Mexico, you know, but there's a border and there's whatever. So you've got all these countries that are COVID free. And then on the other side of the world, you've got Europe, which has got, like, Ireland's just going into a 6-week lockdown, the most strict lockdown in Europe. In Warsaw, Poland, they've just activated their sports stadium as a field hospital because they're running out of their ICU is out of beds. So they want to transfer their COVID customers like Wuhan did, like New York was ready to do with the military ships, the hospital ships. Wales has just gone into lockdown for 2 weeks. Italy is going into lockdown. Belgium is on the brink of disaster. England is talking about a third wave tsunami. Like Europe is in big trouble trying to cope with it. So then you go, well, does lockdown work, and should we do lockdowns and all of that? And you go, well, there's one way to guarantee that a virus cannot get from me to you, and that's called Zoom, right?
I'm not nervous, Terry. You're not scaring me.
You can't get it. Like, as long as you can keep you from me and me from you, that virus, I could be breathing it out all day long, filling my home with it. Like, it's not going to get from me to you. So that's the known way to stop a virus from spreading. And so you've got this horrible thing where everybody's got the law of diminishing effect is a principle in science, right? So everybody's prepared to do something, but eventually it just wears you down, and then you go, oh, like, I'm so over this. Like, I read a post the other day, and a guy said, I did my lockdown, I did my social distancing I did my lockdown for 2 weeks, I did my social distancing and all that for 5 months, and now I just want to live my life, and if I catch COVID and die, then so be it. That is the law of diminishing effect. Everybody's getting tired, so they don't want to do it.
They're being worn down by it.
I guess
they're just tired.
I guess the concern is people are getting tired at the wrong time, because in the northern hemisphere anyway, people are going to be spending more time inside, and it's going to be creating more opportunities for transmission. And I guess like you just said, there's parts of Europe, Russia, United States. It's the numbers are going up rather sharply.
Like up. I mean, if you look at how long it takes from infection through to death, and now, so then they go, oh, the death rate's coming down. The death rate's coming down because there's tens of thousands of doctors and scientists all over the world doing everything they can to work out how to keep people alive. But life after COVID, what they call long COVID, it's not comfortable for a lot of people. There's a lot of people have, I think maybe last time, did we talk about the myocardia? The German study?
Yeah, we did.
Where they had the enlarged hearts?
Yep.
Yeah, so and then, so you go, okay, so there's the sick, then there's the death rate is coming down. So, it's not so many. And then, they didn't really die from COVID. They had diabetes or obesity, but 88% of people have got some other condition that's going on at any one time, So, that doesn't kind of give them the sort of the death, shouldn't give them the death sentence, pardon me. So, it's a very difficult point, because it's like a little fulcrum, right? As time is now, and then there's the seesaw of what people do and what the result is, and then how much desire to work as a herd to save the herd, or just work as a herd and let it be. And then, so if it takes 4 to 6 weeks, for the death rate to come after the infection rate, that's why they study infections, even though they know a lot of them are harmless. They can see that if they can see that trend going up, they can turn it down before they get a massive amount of death rates, right? But the death rate is going down because the medical system has got treatments, so that's not indicative of when the medical system gets overwhelmed, those treatments are no longer possible. Yeah, you start getting too many people in a hospital, ICU gets overwhelmed, people have got cancer, people have got heart attacks, people have got asthma attacks, and then there's no beds, and then those treatments that they've developed are no longer available. Then people are into blah blah blah, and so that's why they have to lock down, or they have to slow down, or they have to put curfews. Like Manchester, Liverpool, London all got 9 p.m. curfews. Paris has got curfews, right? So that's how they're trying to handle it. Say, look, everybody home by 6 p.m. or everybody home by 9 p.m. And lock down the cities in the after hours and stuff like that.
A lot of the discussion in the U.S. is based on the premise that there's a human cost of the disease in terms of illness, death, and there's an economic cost on the other hand of trying to, lock down and mitigate the spread. And a lot of the calculus seems to be trying to find a balance between the two. Is there any, from what you've seen in other parts of the world, is there any merit in that for some of the countries that have no COVID now? Was there a lot of economic cost borne to get to that point?
Well, I mean, firstly, like everything I'm going to say going forward is just observation and opinion, right? Yeah. But I mean, I have traveled, I don't know, I've been to 50, 60 countries around the world. I mean, I've traveled, extensively, so I do have and I've just, like, if you look at even this year, like February and March, I was living in Thailand, because I was like Trump. I thought this thing can't survive in the heat, right? I'm going to bolt out of China. I'm going to live in Thailand, leave China with their problem, right? You guys work that out, but I'm out of here. and then the funny thing is, because like then we were in Thailand and it started to get into Thailand, not so much, right? But they knew that their cold weather was coming, the hot weather was over. So they knew that it was going to start coming over. And then we started seeing all the street stalls with the clothing, just putting all the clothing out, all the shoes were out. And then we said, what's going on? Like, how can everybody be having a fire sale at once? And they said, oh, all the shops have been told to close. Then there were no musicians in the bars. They got shut down. Then the bars got shut down. And Harrison said to me, dude, we better go back to China because this place is going into lockdown, So sure enough, it did. But so the economic cost of, I mean, again, I think that one of the biggest things is how much have people saved. I'm not a saver, so I can save in a business sense, but I'm not a big personal saver. I'm a kind of live life, to the fullest kind of guy. I could be dead tomorrow. Might as well live as well as I can today. Like I'm that kind of guy. So, but the Asian culture, having come from poverty in the last 50, 60 years, they're still that saving mentality. So everybody's got savings, everybody's ready for something to go wrong,
Okay.
So I think step one. And then step two, if you really understood how different the cost of living is in Asia, because people talk about sweatshops and not paying people enough, like Nike that has sweatshops, they don't pay anybody anything. We pay our workers. We're in the expensive part of China for labor. Each state has their own rules, but our minimum pay is, we don't pay anybody minimum, but the minimum is 2,800. So you divide that by 6.7. What's that, Tom? 2,800 divided by 6.7.
Okay.
I'm impressed you had a calculator right there.
I got a phone.
Oh, you got the phone.
418.
Okay, so $418 per month is the minimum salary in my area. Now, in some parts of China, that might be $250 per month.
So
right?
That's about.
We pay 4,000. So we pay about.
And that equates to, like, if full-time worker, that's like $3 an hour.
Yeah. Now, what can they do with that? Well, I've got for $1,000 a month, I can get an engineer, right? Let's say all of my senior staff all drive brand new cars, MG, Chrysler, a couple of Chinese brands, I've got one with a BMW. None of them earn more than $1,000 a month. You know, they're all buying homes. They've all got the latest phones. They've all wear nice clothes to work. Nobody's wearing rags. They've all got, in our company, we've got, I think, seven or eight people have got 2 children, and maybe 11 or 12 have got 1 child. You know, but they could go to 2. You know, so the quality of life possible before corporatism and you know, and marking things up 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000%. You know, the shirt you're wearing now, you know, now some of the things like shirts are coming down, but like a Ralph Polo shirt, might be $150, but somebody could wear a Ralph Polo copy and it costs $3, kind of thing. Well, that's a $3 shirt, maybe it's a $4 shirt, but
right. So
everybody's got this quality of life for much less money. And if they've saved, they can sustain a quality of life. So that, you know what I mean? So the economic cost is quite different if your cost of living can be reduced so low, That's my long answer to your complex question.
So the calculus, if the economic conditions are right, locking down might be a more efficient solution than trying to power your way through it. Whereas lived in them. But some of the countries that you mentioned have a higher, cost of living than China, and they have no COVID.
Yeah, like Korea and Japan. And that would be interesting, because what's weird for me is that you have communism that didn't support the worker under lockdown, right? Well, they supported them by saying your boss can't sack you, right?
Yeah,
so in a sense,
supported them because they made sure they kept a job. I mean,
yeah, so that's great. But that's like all the bosses paid the bill, right? The government didn't pay a cent, right? And then you go to the West, you go to capitalism, and the Fed prints $3.5 trillion to pay the people because the bosses are not going to. I mean, it's like, what?
So I have a question though, Perry. What about the business owners that didn't have the money to pay for the employees? What happened to those employees?
I don't think there's anybody. I just don't think there's anybody, because culturally it's a saving. I mean, we were allowed to, by law, like they passed a whole lot of laws about what a business was allowed to do. So we were allowed to defer our payroll by 30 days. So let's say our March payroll was due on April the 7th. We were allowed to pay it up until May 7th. Okay. So you could continue to do that up till today if you needed to, but only that. Then you could you could form a union with your staff, or your staff could form a union, and you could negotiate with your union. So I've got a friend of mine, for example, who's British, and he's got a large business here, and he negotiated all the staff down to 70% of their payroll, or maybe they could go down to 50%, but the whole workforce had to agree, because they might have known better about the condition of the company, or the likelihood of, like for us, like we make like super high-tech window cleaning equipment, but there's not a lot of people buying window cleaning equipment during COVID, professionals, they're just going to keep using whatever they had, or they'll buy cheaper stuff, so so for us, we can say, okay, we've got a downturn, so if we want to keep the company open, but then you've got to show a weakness that you can't afford their wages, you know what I mean? So face is also pretty important here, bosses are he's not going to kind of lose his face that he's got no money. And everybody's just going to go and look for another job, before he fails.
Right.
It's interesting.
It is interesting.
Fascinating, and like leads of options. Yeah.
And it's so multi-layered. Like, it's not just one thing. It's not just that it's a culture of saving. It's not just that the government said you can't fire anybody. It's not just that you get locked down and you literally can't go anywhere. It's not just that the company runs on the phone. Yeah. All of those things have to play together to get what's happening over there.
And the other thing that I thought, one of the things that I thought recently is that why does people go, oh, Chinese are suppressed, and so that's why they do as they're told, and I thought, no, the bottom line is that China did, I mean, it's 20 years ago, but you and I can talk about what happened 20 years ago in our countries, right? So the mature people did have an outbreak of SARS that they did control, so SARS disappeared. Now, it got affected by the heat. So, when the summer came along, the SARS the SARS died off and finished. So there was no, that's why there was no vaccine created for SARS. They started to work on the vaccine, but they never finished it because the hot temperatures came along. And that's obviously what, Trump took the chance on predicting. Don't worry, it'll be gone by summer,
Mm-hmm.
Summer will kill it off.
Let's hoping.
Yeah.
But everybody remembered what was done. I mean, like we eat with our fingers, but Chinese people don't, right? They eat with chopsticks. And I actually came to China during SARS. I was doing toys at the time, right? I was in the toy business, so I was buying toys at the Canton Fair and all that. And what they had is black chopsticks for serving. Because people eat communally, right? We serve ourselves. Everything's opposite here, right? So we serve a communal meal. We serve a personal meal. They serve a communal meal, right? So the communal meal's in the middle, and you take off the plate what you want to eat, and then you eat it, and then you go back to the main plate. So during SARS, normally you just use your chopsticks, take it off the plate, put it on your plate, and put it in your mouth. Right, so you can see there's a risk of transmission there. So during SARS, they had different colored chopsticks by law in a restaurant. So these are your serving chopsticks. These are your. I'm telling you about the things that are different. If you look at the Chinese stock market, what color do you reckon up is?
Well, because you're bringing this up, I'm guessing it's going to be red.
Red is up.
Green is down. Since you're bringing it up, it's obviously can't be green, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Green is down?
Green is down. Yeah, hilarious. Everything is opposite. And once you get, it takes, I don't know, 7-8 years to live here before you get, okay, everything is opposite. Like we talk straight. Sorry, if you see me, I've got a mosquito in front of me. So it's like
I thought it was just getting to you, the COVID. The lockdown was getting to you.
In the U.S. now, I guess.
Say, Carrie.
Perry, in the U.S., there's some optimism now because they've got some therapeutic drugs out there that President Trump had COVID and spent 3 days in the hospital, and he came out and combination of antibodies and a handful of different drugs, and supposedly there's some vaccines that are close to being ready to be administered to at least some parts of the population. How is that working in China? What's happening on the drug scene in terms of therapeutics and vaccines?
Well, you only need therapeutics if you're sick, but we don't see any of that in China per se. I think phase 1, phase 2. China has 3 vaccines in phase 3 now. I think so. Phase 1 is a few hundred people. Phase 2, I think, is maybe a couple of thousand people. So I don't even know what phase 1 is, but I know phase 2 is if somebody takes it, do they get sick? It's not its efficacy. It's is there a negative reaction just from taking it? So is it safe to take? So the phase 2, most of those vaccines have gone to the Russian ones. Russia's also got 3 or 4. I think I read yesterday there's 180 vaccines under development from 100 different countries around the world. So there's a huge effort to get vaccines working. And so then phase 3 is efficacy, right? So efficacy is what percentage of people that are placebo controlled, what percentage of people contracted and didn't contract. So the FDA has said if a vaccine is more than 50% effective, we'll go with it.
Right.
Fauci's talking about the desirable number being 75% effective. But the problem, for us, if you get the vaccine and then you think, okay, I'm ready to do my social life, 1 in 4 people who took the vaccine is not, might as well have been an anti-vaxxer, because for the net effect, right? Or 1 in 2 people if it's 50%. Yeah.
So
that's kind of.
It's a big one.
Say what?
I saw that bug fly by your camera. It's big.
Yeah, he probably flew close, right? I left the door open because I kind of like the fresh air, but the mosquitoes are out this morning. I don't know why. So I'm going to deal with it afterwards. I'm going to go around and slap those things. So and then the medication, like if you look at the science studies, like remdesivir, whatever it is, I mean, that one has been, that one and hydroxychloroquine. There's a test that came out maybe 3 or 4 days ago. It said none of them have a significant effect.
Right.
So one wouldn't know if somebody has shares in one of those companies that make those ones and make them sound better than others. I mean, it's been done before, right?
Yes.
You know,
the stocks go up and down sharply depending upon what the daily news is.
Well, or I mean, because what's that movie they put out, which is kind of like the orchestration of crashes so that the rich can get richer.
Yeah.
The Big Short or something like that.
Yeah. There's
a great movie to watch on that.
People hedging on both sides of those trades, and you have to figure that a lot of the news is just being contrived to make the stock move one way or another.
Yeah, and they pre-plan it. So, but I mean, that's the scary thing, is that if your billionaires got 40% richer in the first 2 months of COVID, while 30 million people or 50 million people joined an unemployment queue, that transfer of wealth, which is what we're talking about, right? Is a transfer of wealth from the ordinary person in the middle class to the elite, right? I mean, that was a very transparent transfer of wealth right there. Mm-hmm. People sold their shares, billionaires bought them or had shorts on them or had options on them, right? Crash the market as soon as it's down here, buy, bring it back up. Boom, we're 40% richer, billions of dollars richer, with a little V-shaped recovery of the stock market. Predicted. Predicted before. Don't worry. This is going to be a V-shaped recovery, right? It's just scary. I'm lucky because I'm an observer, right? So I can just go, oh, these are just things I've noticed.
Yeah, that just make you lucky, Perry.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see if we can bash around some principles of hygiene, because we are in the cleaning industry and we're kind of talking politics a little bit, but I appreciate, so here's the thing. I mean, so step one, emotionally, are we being communistic, socialistic, Democrat-ish, when we consider seriously about COVID-19, coronavirus, COVID-19, all its different names, right? And then so is it okay? How do we make it okay to treat it seriously? And then maybe we just say, well, what if it was true? How would we behave? And what if it was not true? How would we behave? So we can actually hold a juxtaposition. I think that sometimes that helps us find some mental space to consider, what's happening in science. Because why are there billions and billions and billions of dollars being poured into finding a vaccine if it's a hoax? That little part doesn't make sense, for example. Why is there, like, if you go to sciencedirect.com and you type in COVID, right, you can see article after article. One of the ones I read yesterday, by the way, so in Wuhan, first in China, mature men smoke a lot more than anywhere else in the world, right? So in Wuhan, 32% of the adult male population smokes, right? Now, of the people hospitalized with COVID, what percentage of the 1,162 male adults that are in this group assessed, what percentage of them were smokers? What do you reckon?
I'm thinking a big number, because smokers seem to have a weakened immune system. So I would think it would be a good chunk, maybe 60%.
10%.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Nicotine. No, nicotine has anti-inflammatory qualities. I'll send you the link. Okay, I'll send you the link after this.
So you're not seriously recommending that I go out and start smoking?
No, definitely not. But
okay.
But what they said is they've known forever that nicotine has an anti-inflammatory quality about it, but the delivery system of nicotine to the body via a cigarette and the tar and the phosphorus and all of that other stuff is way more dangerous than the value of nicotine with its medical values. But I didn't even know there were any medical values to nicotine until I read this article. I mean, it's like, what?
That's so confusing. My brain.
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link, and you can put it up in the group after this. Right?
Give us that link. That would be useful. And yeah, that kind of flies in the face of popular thinking. You know.
Yeah.
Smoking would put one at more risk. Wow.
And you'll see me I use this is a vape, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a vape. You know. But at least I don't get. I mean, I get nicotine, but not the. But I don't know what else I'm getting. But I'm going to stop this too. But I used to smoke a little bit, so I'm kind of halfway. Halfway. Now I'm going. Hang on, this is my nicotine applicator. I've got anti-inflammatory qualities in this thing. I
have to hold on to it.
I guess that's the problem with nicotine. Regardless of how it's delivered, you kind of get to the point where you really need to have it. It's addictive. So,
well, it's addictive and it's enhancive, right? It's no different than coffee. There's if you have a cigarette and you haven't had, like, if I go and spend time with my family, I don't smoke or even use this very much, but because I've got a little boy, right? So I'm not going to I'm not going to normalize it for him, but so then if I have some nicotine, I'll get, whoa, head spin and all that. But if you're just, microdosing on a continual basis, you're going to, I mean, I know guys I've got alpha brain, from On It, right? For memory and focus, right? So that's microdosing of other chemicals to keep your brain as sharp as you can, so nicotine, I can get up at 6 a.m. I usually go to bed at midnight. I'm usually talking with friends until midnight or 1 o'clock. But, when that 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning, I mean, I'm using nicotine as with my beer or wine or gin and tonic or whatever I'm doing, That's life in China for a foreigner, by the way.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, this is such a different conversation than I thought we were going to have.
So where did it come from? It came from, every day I get if you go to sciencedirect.com and you subscribe, right? And then which words are you interested in? COVID. And they send, every couple of days they send, here are some emails. I subscribe to several topics with Science Direct, and so you read these articles that come in and these people are studying all this stuff and you go, well, if it was a hoax, why are all these people studying all this stuff, Isn't it? So we're talking about like the medicines and the treatments and stuff like that. I mean, there's so much work going into the treatment of people who get COVID because it is not an easy disease. It's harmless for some people and deadly for others. And then there's this great big gap in the middle of people and they're trying to work out, well, who is it? Is it, because they said now there was another article on people with blood type O are significantly more likely to end up hospitalized with COVID, whereas A and AB are the least likely, like all that's going on. So, but the average person has got time to read all that, run a family, run a business, deal with this, deal with that, so that's why I read it, and say, well, I've got that time, because we're more leveraged than most people,
Yeah, I just had to run a fact check on Science Direct. Like, so
yeah,
can we trust Science Direct? Looks like the prevailing wisdom is yes.
Yes. Yeah. And you could go Science Direct. I mean, there's several that I subscribe to. There's ResearchGate. There's several. There's PubMed. So there's several it's where do people publish papers, or where do published papers get published, republished, consolidated. And you can find, people's papers, because I'm the same as you. I go and say, somebody sends me an article, and I go, well, who owns the newspaper? Who's the publisher? And who owns the publisher? Right?
Do I want to listen to this or not?
Yeah. And then you read an article from the New York Times, and they refer to the article that they're referring to, and I go click, and I go through to the source article and read that, and say, are you pulling this out of context, or is it in context? Yeah. Good on you.
Really, you have to do that nowadays. I mean, you really do.
Yeah. It's a very soundbite culture. But again, if you've been a soundbite person and you didn't know it, right? You just found yourself repeating sound bites, and you haven't got confront, like the key word is confront, then the switch to becoming scientific is quite awkward. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So people like me are interesting because you can just listen to me and you can get some stuff out of it, but you don't know how many hours I read every day to make sure that what I'm saying is sound, and the advice that we're giving with our products, for example, is sound, and then people want to ask me what's next, and it's sound,
Speaking of, we do need to get those links up, Tom, to Perry's 2 different sites, so that people that want the hypochlorous and also I can't remember the other site now. It's
like the Fog Blaster, yeah.
What are your websites, Perry?
So the ones that as far as hygiene's concerned, I'd say the ones that we would say are thefogblaster.com.
Which is a really great price.
Yeah, and it's and
you don't see a lot of other electrostatic sprayers. So
yeah, like this one is not just an electrostatic. I mean, electrostatic is kind of like a myth, right? In fact, most of the people who say that they have an electrostatic sprayer will say that it's because they want to direct the fog at something, or the mist. Most of them are misters, and they want to direct it at something, and then it's going to end up electrostatically sticking to the other side. That is total BS. That is absolute marketing BS. Anything which is on the ground, your table, your chair, your computer, maybe your computer's got a static charge, right? But everything is neutral. So firstly, the thing that you're telling everybody it's going to electrostatically stick to is not even charged. Secondly, you see them with these sprayers, and the spray comes out and it goes like this, like it's droplets. They're not airborne. Whereas with Fog Blaster, you can actually put the fog in a room, and you could walk back in 10 minutes later, and you can still, feel the fogginess of the room. I mean, it's airborne. The virus is airborne. The fog should be airborne. And then what we do is we get the droplet size down as we got a laboratory test, like 30 million grains. They call them grains when they're measuring how many particles or droplets or whatever, but 30 million grains per cubic inch. So you can't even see what Fog Blaster is doing, but I can show you the test results, right? So, and then they stay airborne, and then they evaporate. Then the chlorine is out there, doing what the chlorine does in its radical form, right? So. And then we add 30 million negative ions per second, because negative ions are also oxidizers. And then there's a safe level of ozone in there, because that's a byproduct of bipolar ionization. So it's a very, very, it's a simple product, but it's very scientifically, sound in its actual direction. I think it's the only product actually designed after COVID for the purposes of airborne sanitization, right? And so the real thing is, the real business with Fog Blaster, if I can give a little pitch on it, the real business is not to be a service provider. Own one for yourself, sanitize before you go into somebody's home, sanitize before you leave, so you're protecting yourself against the customer and the customer against you. But after that, you can buy and sell, like you can approach us and distribute Fog Blaster, because everybody should be fog blasting every 30 minutes, every 15 minutes, every hour. I don't know what it is, but if the CDC says after 15 minutes in talking with somebody within 6 feet, you are at risk, right? Face to face, then one would suggest to you that that would be indicative of what the viral load is potentially during 15 minutes of talking with somebody face to face within 16 feet. So if we're gonna try and create a safe work environment, or we're going to try and protect ourselves, with others, or run a bar or run a beautician or whatever, then we can imagine that maybe once an hour or every 10 people, we should sanitize the air, and we won't kill everything, but everything we do will make a difference,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and then the other one, Tom, is sanitizetraining.com. We haven't had a look at that. We haven't updated that. Maybe I was just talking to Harrison last night and said we've got a lot more material to go in there, so we'll put a lot more material in there in the next few days, so people could keep an eye on that one. But it's got some interesting, stuff in there. Yeah, and it's all free. Awesome. And then the other one is you can buy Nixil from us, or you can buy Nixil from Nixil. Like we don't have a financial interest in Nixil, but Nixil is the hypochlorous acid supplier that we promote, Nixil.com, Nixall. Now we're a distributor.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, we're a distributor of Nixil, so you can buy Nixil from fogblaster.com. Oh no, N for Nancy, Ixall.
I'm sorry, spell that again.
N for November.
Okay.
Ixall. I talk funny, Tom.
No,
he hears funny.
Liz will tell you I don't pay attention.
Yeah, that product there. So Nixil, 400 parts per million. So there are other companies, like privately we have some relationships with some other people, but this is the one that we have on our website, and they're based in Missouri, and we basically, people buy from us and we drop ship from them. We've got some stock in our Iowa warehouse, but mostly we drop ship from Nixil, and so it's just basically you buy it retail from them, or you buy it retail from them.
Some people on the show in the past, and we have some sources for on-site generation. I think they're from a resource page if you want to go that route as well. Perry, whenever we're talking, an hour goes by too fast.
Oh my God, we are over time. How did that happen?
We're over time. Yeah.
Thank you for getting up so early this morning and sharing with us.
That's all right. I'll show you where I live. 2 seconds. This is where I live in Ningbo, right? Because the sun's just risen. All right, I'll give you a quick pan.
Holy cow, it's beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, it is.
So this is my little balcony.
Okay.
Oh wow, that's beautiful, Perry.
Yeah, stunning, eh?
Wow, I love that building. What is that building?
They call it the Corn Cob.
Oh, I see
why. That's an iconic.
Yes, that's the one I was asking about.
Yeah, there you go. I'll get my head out of the way. It's kind of stunning, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's a lovely calm morning, so there's no wind. So, that gives you an idea of, yeah. So my son lives in can I get my arm around that building there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we kind of live a couple of kilometers away from each other. So.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so that gives you a little walk around.
Well, thank you, Perry. This was good. And
anytime, and the thing is that you can get me on talk. Let's see next time. Let's go and talk about some business. Something that's not COVID related or whatever. Because I'm very passionate about personal development, and I'm passionate about business, and I'm passionate about helping people imagine. There's a talk that I'm preparing for Joe Kowalski's event in December, and so he's Joe Kowalski is servicemonster.com, that guy, and but it's going to be called Imagine Action, right? How to take your talk into tangible, and trying to walk people through, because sometimes it's years to get an idea. Some of the brushes that we developed taken 7 years to get from what I visualized into what it is now. And so letting people know that. So I'd love to come on as some motivational stuff if you want.
Well, let's go ahead and drop off the broadcast, because we're keeping people over.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Sorry, everybody.
If you want to hang,
I'll stay here.
we'll check our schedule. Thanks, guys. Tomorrow, Heather Canning, everything that you always wanted to know about Indeed, but we're afraid to ask. It's going to be tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.